Hello again. I noticed that in Northern Ireland there is another row about gay partnerships or homosexual marriage or whatever it is we're supposed to call it these days. The Presbyterian Church in Northern Ireland has decided not to extend full membership to people who are in same-sex relationships. The other year they deposed an elder of the church who was in a same-sex relationship and said that it wasn't compatible with his position. The problem here is that the Bible is pretty clear about marriage, that it is between a man and a woman and should last forever. I happen to agree with this view. This doesn't mean, of course, that I think that two men or two women should be forbidden to live together or that it should be against the law for people to engage in homosexual activity. I remember the situation in Britain before homosexuality was legalised, and it was pretty terrible for gay people in those days. Being convicted of sodomy could mean ruin, the loss of one's job, and becoming a social outcast, even being cut off from one's family. I've said many times before on here that I'm strongly in favour of consenting adults being able to get up to whatever they wish in the privacy of their own homes. And I'm very, very passionate about that. It's nothing to do with me what adults do indoors out of my sight. When it becomes a public matter, though, with weddings involving two men and same-sex couples holding hands and kissing in public and adopting children together, then it ceases to be a private matter and I feel able to comment on my views. All the evidence suggests, and I talked about this the other day, that the best start in life for a child and the kind of childhood most likely to lead to a happy and prosperous life in adulthood is one where a man and woman are married and raise their children together. There is no doubt about this at all, although I have seen a marked reluctance among progressive liberals to examine the research or look at what is said in peer-reviewed journals on this subject. This is because most left-wingers are concerned less with evidence than they are with ideology, and the ideology around homosexuality and transsexualism is now so rigid that it would perhaps be fair to describe it as an orthodoxy. It is an orthodoxy which can lead to severe difficulties for those who ask too many questions, even to losing jobs and so on, which is not really a very good sign. Here are a few questions which we might ask. Is there any research which suggests that children raised by same-sex couples are as happy and stable in later life as those raised in conventional families? Are same-sex couples as likely to remain in their relationship as heterosexual couples? Is there any difference in long-term outcome for children raised by two women as opposed to two men? What do children raised in such families say about their experience? There's all the difference in the world between accepting homosexuality and being happy for two men to shack up together in the same way that heterosexual couples do, and in thinking that such a relationship should be on an equal footing in every way with marriages and families which involve one man and one woman. These are two different points of view. It is sometimes argued that many heterosexual couples these days separate, leading to children being raised by single parents or in blended families, and this is perfectly true. I think that the take-home message here, though, is to try and strengthen marriage and work towards encouraging couples to take wedding vows more seriously and stick at their marriages rather than giving up when stormy times come. In other words, rather than simply abandoning everything and saying, oh, well, marriage should be open to everybody and, times have changed, I think that we should be trying to reinforce conventional marriage, which is to say marriage between men and women. The more I think about it, the more it seems to me that many of the wonderful liberal things which happened in Britain during the 1960s have proved to be a disaster for society. Relaxing the law on divorces led, as anybody might have guessed it would, to an increase in divorces. Legalising abortions resulted not in the tiny number which we were promised in very special circumstances, but an absolute avalanche of terminations. Here's a figure which might shock viewers, and probably very few people have heard it mentioned. Every 12 hours in Britain, a baby is aborted because he or she has Down syndrome. Some babies are aborted simply because they are found to have webs of skin between their fingers. This wasn't at all the kind of thing which the 1960s law which legalised abortion had in mind. They certainly weren't legislating for eugenics. I give a link in the description to this video to that particular figure so people can check it for themselves. It was quoted in Hansard last year. Even the change in law which legalised homosexuality has led over the decades from a position where we are not prejudiced against homosexuals to a point where anybody not wildly and openly keen and enthusiastic on homosexual marriage is accused of bigotry. Even the virtual legalisation of pornography in the 1960s and 70s has opened the way to the modern world where we are all deluged with the stuff. The old state of affairs, where those who wished to acquire it were able to buy stuff under the counter, has turned into a situation where even children are now exposed to the stuff every day on their mobile telephones. Perhaps the swinging 60s were not such a great thing after all in retrospect.